Hi guys, this is part 5 and today we're going to be implementing a character death system. So we're going to be working with ragdolls because ragdolls are a lot of fun. So let us first give our players some means by which to die. So I'm going to import a saw blade model just into my models folder over here. Just drag this into my scene and change its coordinates. Oops, I'm failing to select this. To 0, 0, and 0. And also need to rotate this, -90 on the Y. And actually, this is looking a little bit small. I want to make it a bit bigger. Let's position it something like that, and I'll just put it over there. Okay, so just remove this animator component. We're not going to use it. Okay, and we are going to create a new script quickly called sawblade. And we're actually going to apply this script not to the saw blade, but actually just to the blade, because it's just going to make our lives a little bit easier, because it's actually the blade that we want to spin around and do the collision detection for the player or whatever. So I mean, you could of course put it on here and then have links to the blade, but let's rather keep things simple like this. Drag it on here, and we'll open this up. And we can create a public float speed. Just set this to 300. And now, in the update method, we're going to want to say transform. So this is the blade dot rotate. Now we want to know which axis we're going to be rotating around. So if we go into Unity, and we can just press W to change to these directional axes like this, and let's just click on here to go to global, and we can see that we wanted to rotate around this blue axis, right, to make it spin like this. So that blue axis, RGB, red, green, blue, corresponds to the axes X, Y, Z, so that is our global Z axis. So want to transform.rotate around the z-axis, which is also known as vector3.forward. And we can multiply that by speed, multiplied by time.delta time. And by default, it will rotate around its local axis. We want it to rotate around the world axis since we were in global. And so we can just do something like that. So just to quickly demonstrate, we'd want to be rotating around the red axis if we are doing local rotation. So R for red is the x-axis, which is vector3.left or right. But yeah, it doesn't matter which one you want to do, just global seemed easier. I don't want perspective mode, no, I want to view from the side. Okay, now this should be spinning. And it is, okay, good. And I also want to add a sphere collider. And if we just come in a bit closer, we can see that this is perfectly around it. I want to make this a little bit smaller actually, just so that the player doesn't feel like he ever dies cheaply. Unless you want your game to be frustrating, then, you know, by all means, make this even larger. So now, we're going to say that this is a trigger. And to the player, where's the player now? All the way up here, okay. We're going to add a physics rigid body, and we don't want this to use gravity, and we want to say it is kinematic, so it's going to be, all the movements could be controlled by the script, not by physics. And we just need this because, just remember to apply this to your prefab, and then we can just hide this player again. This is just so that the trigger will pick it up. So and we should actually make this box collider on the player a trigger as well. So just apply and hide again. Okay, now in the sawblade script we can say void on trigger enter, and that takes in a collider C. And we can just say if c.tag is equal to, oh, I forgot my if. I said it, but I didn't write it. If c.tag is equal to player, then, and we'll send some message about inflicting damage over here once we've set that up. So back to Unity. Actually, let's check if this collision detection is working at the moment. So we can just say debug.log die. Okay. Now let's see. When we walk into this, we do not get a message saying die. So that is not working correctly. Does our player actually have the tag player assigned to it? It doesn't. So player is one of the default tags. We can just apply that. Remember to apply the changes to your prefab after everything you do. And now we'll go back here. Now you can see it's printing out die. Okay, so we want this. We want to have some script that's going to sort of be the base for all creatures in the game, be they player or AI controlled or whatever. So we're going to have a new C# script, and we can just call this entity or sentient or whatever you want to call it, and just open this up, and this is going to have a public void take damage, since we want all things to be able to take damage, and it's going to take in a float for well, we can just call this damage, and this is going to have a public float health, and over here we'll say health minus equals damage, so subtract the damage from the health, and we can then say that if the health is less than or equal to 0, then we want to die. Okay, and we can create another public void over here called die, and yeah, that should be fine for now. Let's go to our player script. Where is it? Player controller. And we can say that this extends entity. Okay, so now it has access to, well, it inherits these methods and variables. So we can now see that if we go onto our player, there's now a health variable that we can set. So let's give it some health, say 10 for now. Apply the change, and we want the saw blade. On getting the player tag, we can say c.getComponent, and we want to get the entity component, and from there we can call take damage, and we'll just say take 10 damage, so it dies immediately for now. Let's go back here and see if this is working. Oh, well, we've got no way to see if it's working, actually. We need to go into our entity and give ourselves a debug.log over here. We can just say die again. And now, let's see. Okay, so that is being called. So it's just important to understand that even though on our player there's no script called entity and we're getting the entity component, it's getting the entity component through this player controller, which is extending entity. So now, let's see, what do we want to do? We want to make a ragdoll. So let's go into our models. Let's drag this player model in. And once again, we're not going to need this animated component, so we can just remove that. And let's just give it this black material that we're using for the time being. And we can say game object, create other, and let's find the ragdoll over here. So setting up a ragdoll in Unity is very easy. It's basically just got this drag and drop menu. It's just a bit tedious, but doesn't really matter. It doesn't take too long. Let's just drop all these bones out, just like this. Okay. So first thing we need is our root bone. So that will just be this over here. We need our left hips. So in my case, that is the upper left leg and the lower leg, lower left leg for the left knee, and then the foot, right hips, leg upper, leg lower, foot, and for the left arm, arm upper, arm lower, and same thing for the right arm. You can see what I mean by being a little tedious, but it's got nice results, so we'll bear through. Middle spine, I guess that's the chest, and for the head, that's the head. And yeah, we can just leave that like it is, and we'll just hit this create button. So now you can see that this has all sorts of fancy stuff going on. It's generated colliders and directions and all sorts of stuff for it to calculate the physics of how this player is going to die. So we can let's just set this to 0. We want to demo this dying. I believe I have my scale set to 0.3 on all axes. Okay, so the only thing I'm not really happy about is this big box collider over here, which I believe is this one over here. Let's just have a look at what this is doing right now. Let us take our player prefab and just apply this non-functional state that it's in right now, so it doesn't. Okay, so we can see it's sort of it's hanging on this box collider it has over here. So I'm going to drag this up to the sort of belly region over here and just create something like this. Okay, and I'm also interested in what's going on with the head here. The collider seems awfully small for this. Let's turn the radius up a bit. So you can just fiddle with all these collider sizes, and then if you really want to get into it, then there's all this stuff over here, but I've never dared to look at this stuff. I wouldn't know where to begin. So let's play this. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. Good job, Unity Physics Engine. Let's turn this into a prefab. So into our prefabs, let's call this player ragdoll, and we can just drag this in here. And now we're safe to delete this. Okay, I am recording, right? Okay, thank God. Let us do what? Let's instantiate this player ragdoll when the player dies. So we're going to go into the player controller. Actually, we're going to go into entity, and we're going to create a public game object ragdoll. And over here in the die, we're going to say game object R for ragdoll. Actually, let's call this ragdoll instead of game object. We're going to create a ragdoll script later on. We call this R is equal to instantiate. We're instantiating the ragdoll. And let's see. We want to instantiate it obviously at the transform's position and the transform's rotation. And we want to instantiate it as a game object, but then we want to get the ragdoll component of this game object. So .get component ragdoll, capital R, because the script that we're referring to, not the game object we just created. And yeah, just like so. And then we can just say destroy this .game object. It will instantiate a ragdoll and then destroy itself. Now let's create this ragdoll script I keep referring to. Ragdoll. Okay, that will fix that error over there. And we want to assign that script to the prefab, so we can just say add component scripts ragdoll. And okay, we'll be doing some stuff in there, but for now let's just see that this is working. Hold on, we made our player invisible. Let's just set this to visible, apply, and turn off visibility again. Okay, here we are. So now if we run into this, nothing's happening because we haven't assigned the ragdoll variable. We just need to drag it in there. Okay, we'll just hit apply. I should actually get into the habit of setting my values in the prefab, because then I don't have to hit apply every time. But anyway, now if we run into here, you can see our player dies, but things are not quite perfect yet, because say we're doing something like this, we're sliding and we get up. Now the ragdoll resets to its initial standing up position and plays, simulates its death physics from there. So we need to set the ragdoll, all its bones, to the same position as the player's bones when it's instantiated. So that's what this ragdoll script is going to do. We're going to have a public void called copy pose or set pose, and this is going to take in a transform pose, let's say. Okay, and in this entity script, we're going to say r.copy pose, and we're going to copy the pose of this transform. Okay, so you can just say transform or this.transform, and yeah, now we're going to add the code in for this copy pose. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have a list of all the bones in this pose transform we've been given, and all the bones in the ragdoll. Now we're going to use something called a list, just because it's got a very nice function which is just .add, rather than using like an array where we've got to worry about all the indices and stuff. We can just say using system.collections.generic, and this will allow us to use these lists. So we can say private list, and we've got to give it a type, so it's going to be of type transform. And we can just say this is equal, oh wait, we need to give it a name. Let's call this pose bones, and this will just be equal to a new list of type transform. And we can just copy this. This is going to be the same thing, but we'll just call this ragdoll bones. Okay, and now we're going to have a private void over here, which we can just call add children, and this is going to take in a transform parent. Okay, and it's also going to want to know which list to add the